Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 2 a.m., mascara streaking down her cheeks, wondering when she had become this person. The person who apologized for things she didn't do. The person who walked on eggshells in her own home. The person who had forgotten what her own laughter sounded like. 3 hours earlier, she'd been at dinner with friends when her phone buzzed. Again and again. 12 messages from Marcus in 15 minutes. Where are you? Who are you with? Why aren't you answering? Each message a small detonation in her chest. She'd excused herself, gone to the bathroom, and called him back. I told you I was meeting Sarah and Jennifer, she whispered, her voice small. You're always with them, he'd said, his tone sharp enough to cut. What about me? What about us? She'd left dinner early. She always left early. Now, staring at her reflection, Sarah barely recognized herself. Somewhere between I love you and you're too sensitive. She'd lost the girl who used to paint until sunrise, who'd backpack through Europe alone, who'd never asked permission to exist. If you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that slowly dimmed your light, this story is for you. Because what happened next changed everything. The next morning, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, coffee growing cold in her hands. On the counter, an envelope. Inside, an acceptance letter to a 6-month artist residency in Portugal. Her dream. The opportunity she'd worked toward for 3 years. She'd applied in secret, back when she still believed she could want things for herself. Marcus walked in, kissed the top of her head. Morning, babe. What's that? Her mouth opened, closed. Nothing. Just junk mail. She watched him pour coffee, whistle some tune, completely unaware that she'd just buried her dream in a lie. And in that moment, she understood. This was the crossroads. Accept the residency and face the inevitable explosion. Turn it down and watch the last piece of herself disappear forever. The stakes had never been clearer. It wasn't just about a program or a relationship. It was about whether Sarah could remember how to choose herself. That evening, her best friend Jennifer called. Did you hear back from the residency? Sarah's silence said everything. Sarah, tell me you're not thinking about turning it down. It's complicated, Jen. Marcus needs me here. We're building a life together. Building a life? Sarah, you haven't painted in 8 months. You stopped seeing us. You quit the pottery class you loved. What life are you building? The truth hit like cold water. She wasn't building anything. She was erasing herself, brick by brick, hoping that if she became small enough, quiet enough, perfect enough, the criticism would stop. The accusations would stop. The feeling of never being enough would finally stop. But it never stopped. 2 days later, Sarah decided to tell Marcus about the residency. She rehearsed it in the shower, in the car, while chopping vegetables for dinner. I need to talk to you about something important. I got accepted into an art program. He came home in a good mood. This was her chance. Marcus, I need to tell you something. He looked up from his phone. Yeah? I applied to an artist residency program in Portugal, and I got in. The silence stretched like taffy. Then, Portugal, for how long? 6 months. He laughed. Actually laughed. You're joking, right? 6 months? What about your job? What about us? What about the apartment lease I just renewed because you said you loved living here? I didn't say I was definitely going, Just what, Sarah? You applied to move to another country without even telling me? What kind of partner does that? There it was. The twist. Somehow, her dream had become her betrayal. Her wanting something had become proof of her selfishness. This was his superpower, taking her reality and inverting it until she questioned her own memory, her own worth, her own right to exist outside his orbit. You're right, she heard herself say. I should have told you I wasn't thinking. He softened, took her hands. Baby, I'm not trying to control you. I just don't understand why you'd want to leave when everything you need is right here. Unless... He paused, letting the word hang. Unless I'm not enough for you? And there was the trap, disguised as vulnerability, wrapped in the language of love. She spent that night researching how to decline the residency offer. But her finger hovered over the send button, unable to press it. Something inside her, some small voice she'd tried to silence for too long, whispered, "Not yet. Don't give up yet." The following week, Sarah visited her mom. They sat on the porch, watching clouds drift across an autumn sky. "You seem tired, honey." "Just busy with work." Her mom sipped her tea, quiet for a moment. Then, "Your father used to tell me I was too sensitive too." Sarah's head snapped up. Her parents had divorced when she was 12. She'd never known why. He'd criticize my friends, make comments about my weight, question where I'd been, and I'd apologize, always apologizing. I thought if I could just be better, calmer, less needy, he'd be happy. But people like that are never happy, Sarah. They need you to be small so they can feel big. Mom, I see it in your eyes, sweetheart. That look of someone constantly calculating, constantly trying to predict and prevent the next upset. I wore that look for 15 years. Sarah felt tears burning. How did you leave? I woke up one morning and realized I'd taught you that love meant disappearing, and I couldn't let you grow up thinking that was normal. So I chose you. And in choosing you, I finally chose myself. That conversation cracked something open in Sarah. She started noticing patterns she'd normalized. How Marcus would be affectionate after moments of cruelty. How he'd isolate her, then blame her for being withdrawn. How he'd make grand promises during her moments of doubt, only to dismiss her needs days later. The cycle was so precise, it could have been choreographed. She found herself in therapy the next week. Dr. Chen listened without judgment as Sarah unpacked years of compressed pain. What you're describing is a pattern of psychological manipulation, Dr. Chen said gently. The question isn't whether you're being too sensitive. The question is, who convinced you that your feelings weren't valid? Sarah broke down. Really broke down. The kind of crying that comes from finally being seen after years of being told you're invisible. I'm so tired of being afraid, she whispered. Afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, wanting the wrong thing. I'm tired of living like I'm walking through a minefield. Then maybe, Dr. Chen said, it's time to stop walking on his terms and start walking toward yourself. Things escalated 3 weeks before the residency deadline. Sarah had started painting again, small canvases in secret, hidden in the closet. But Marcus found them. What the hell is this? She froze. I've just been painting a little. It helps me relax. Relax? You need to relax from what, Sarah? From me? From our relationship? Is that what you're saying? No, Marcus, You're still thinking about that stupid program, aren't you? After everything we talked about? I haven't decided anything. That's the problem. You shouldn't have to decide. The answer should be obvious. Unless... His face darkened. Unless you're planning to leave me. The accusation hung in the air, heavy with threat. This was the game. Every path led to her being the villain. Want something? Selfish. Need space? Abandonment. Express hurt. Too sensitive. The maze had no exit because he kept moving the walls. But something shifted in Sarah that night. Maybe it was the weeks of therapy. Maybe it was her mother's words echoing in her mind. Maybe it was simply that she'd finally reached the bottom and discovered there was solid ground there, and she could stand. What if I am? She said quietly. What? What if I am thinking about leaving? Her voice grew stronger. What if I want to go to Portugal? What if I want to paint and have friends and make decisions without fear? His face transformed. The mask slipped. She saw rage, pure and unfiltered. You ungrateful, after everything I've done for you? I gave you everything. You gave me a cage and called it love. The words escaped before she could stop them. True words. Dangerous words. He grabbed his keys. I'm leaving. When I come back, you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Because this? He gestured at her, at the paintings, at everything she dared to want. This isn't the woman I fell in love with. The door slammed, and in the silence that followed, Sarah realized something profound. He was right. She wasn't the woman he fell in love with. She wasn't the diminished, apologetic, self-erasing ghost she'd become. She was someone trying to remember how to be real. Sarah sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by her secret paintings. Each canvas a breadcrumb trail back to herself. A sunset in gold and crimson. A woman's silhouette, arms raised to the sky. Abstract swirls that felt like freedom. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, I'm sorry, I love you. Let's talk when I get home. Please. Another buzz. Jennifer. Whatever you need, I'm here. Another. Her mom. Proud of you, sweetheart. No matter what. Another. The residency coordinator. Final decision needed by Friday. We'd love to have you, Sarah. Your portfolio is extraordinary. She looked around her apartment, their apartment, his furniture, his preferred paint colors, his choice of neighborhood. She'd moved into his life so completely, she'd forgotten she'd once had her own. When Marcus came home 2 hours later, she was sitting at the table, the acceptance letter between them. Baby, let's not fight, he started. I was upset, but I'm going to Portugal. Sarah. And I'm moving out, today. Jennifer's on her way with her truck. She watched him cycle through emotions, disbelief, anger, pleading. This was the moment she'd feared for so long, the explosion, the consequences, the price of choosing herself. You can't do this, he said. We've built something. Don't throw it away over some stupid art program. It's not about the program, Marcus. It's about me remembering I exist. That's dramatic. You're being dramatic. And there it was again. The dismissal, the invalidation, the script she'd learned by heart. But this time she didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't apologize. I know this hurts, she said, and meant it. But I've been hurting for a long time, and I'm choosing to stop. He tried everything, promises to change, reminders of good times, predictions of her failure, accusations of betrayal, tears, rage, manipulation disguised as love. Sarah felt it all wash over her like rain, uncomfortable but cleansing. Jennifer arrived. They packed in silence while Marcus watched, oscillating between fury and bargaining. By nightfall, Sarah's belongings filled Jennifer's truck. Not much, she realized. She'd slowly given away pieces of herself until there wasn't much left to carry. Standing in the doorway one last time, Marcus made a final play. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize nobody else will put up with you. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, saw the manipulation, saw the insecurity masked as dominance, saw the pattern that would repeat with whoever came after her. Maybe, she said, but at least I'll be free to make that mistake myself. She closed the door on that chapter of her life. 3 months later, Sarah stood on a cliff in Portugal, canvas before her, painting the Atlantic Ocean as it crashed against ancient rocks. The wind tangled her hair. Salt spray kissed her cheeks. She was painting the moment she learned to breathe again. The residency had been everything and nothing like she'd imagined. The work was hard. She'd had moments of doubt, nights of crying, days where she questioned everything, but she'd also laughed until her stomach hurt, made friends who celebrated her victories, created art that meant something, remembered what it felt like to wake up without dread. She'd learned that freedom isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing yourself despite it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Chen. How's the view? She sent back a photo of her painting, the ocean, herself smiling. Actually smiling. The journey hadn't been about escaping Marcus. It had been about returning to Sarah. The Sarah who'd gotten lost somewhere between "I love you" and "you're not enough." The Sarah who'd forgotten that her dreams mattered, her voice mattered, her existence mattered. Breaking free from a toxic relationship isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 small choices. Choosing to see the pattern, choosing to tell the truth, choosing to leave, choosing to stay gone when they inevitably promise to change, choosing to rebuild when you're standing in the rubble of everything you thought you knew. It's choosing yourself, over and over and over again. Back in her studio apartment, Sarah had created a wall of sticky notes. Each one held a truth she was learning. Your feelings are valid. You don't need permission to want things. Love doesn't require you to disappear. You are not too sensitive. You are with someone too cruel. Leaving is not failure. Staying where you're diminished is. She'd add to it daily. Reminders for when the old doubts crept in. For when she missed what she thought they had. For when Marcus's voice echoed in her head, questioning her worth. One evening, painting the sunset, she realized she'd gone an entire day without thinking about him. Then 2 days. Then a week. The space he'd occupied in her mind was slowly filling with herself. She thought about what she'd tell someone in her old position. What would she say to the Sarah of 6 months ago, standing in that bathroom at 2 a.m.? You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not too much or too little. You're in a relationship that requires you to be less than you are. And that's not love. That's captivity disguised as commitment. The person you are without them? That's not the damaged version. That's the real one. And she deserves to exist in full color, at full volume, taking up all the space she needs. Leaving will be hard. Staying will cost you everything. Choose hard. Choose yourself. Choose life. As the sun set over the Portuguese coast, painting the sky in impossible colors, Sarah made a video for her phone. Just her, windswept and paint-stained and undeniably alive. "Hey," she said to the camera, to herself, to anyone who needed to hear it. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel like you're constantly apologizing for existing, that's your answer. If you're afraid to be yourself, afraid to want things, afraid to take up space, that's not love. That's not what you deserve. You deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. You deserve to be supported, not controlled. You deserve to want things without permission and feel things without judgment. And if you can't be those things where you are, then maybe where you are isn't where you belong. I'm not going to lie, leaving is terrifying. You'll doubt yourself 1,000 times. You'll miss the good moments. You'll wonder if you made a mistake. But on the other side of that fear is a version of yourself you forgot existed, and she's worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. She posted the video that night. By morning, it had been viewed 10,000 times. Messages flooded in from people who saw themselves in her story, who'd been standing in their own bathrooms at 2 a.m., who'd been silencing themselves to keep the peace, who'd forgotten what their own laughter sounded like. Sarah realized her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever lost themselves in loving someone who couldn't love them back without conditions. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Not when things get worse. Right now. Ask yourself, when was the last time I felt free to be fully myself? When was the last time I made a choice based on what I wanted, not what would avoid conflict? When was the last time I felt celebrated instead of criticized? If you can't remember, you have your answer. Write down one thing you've given up to keep the peace. Maybe it's a friendship, a hobby, a dream, your own opinion, your voice. Now ask, what would it take to get that back? You don't have to leave today. You don't have to make any dramatic decisions. But you do have to start being honest with yourself about the cost of staying small. Because here's what Sarah learned, what her mother learned, what I hope you'll learn. You are not required to shrink so someone else can feel big. You are not required to apologize for wanting more. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You are required to remember that you matter, that your dreams matter, that your voice, your space, your existence matters. The world needs you at full brightness. Not dimmed, not apologetic, not half-present. All of you. Unapologetically you. So what's one small thing you can do today to choose yourself? Drop it in the comments. Let's build a community of people who are done apologizing for existing. And if you're on the edge of that cliff, looking at the ocean, wondering if you can really do this, you can. You absolutely can. The view from the other side is worth it. I promise.